Police have no idea how many people were involved in the bloody brawl, which left 5 hospitalised, including a 20-year-old man who sustained serious head injuries and bleeding on the brain. What is known is those involved in the fight had gathered in the Nobby's Beach car park to show off their vehicles, many of which displayed P plates. The brawl erupted just after 9 p.m. and lasted almost an hour. Some of the injured were taken away by ambulance, others made their own way to hospital. Police believe the majority of car enthusiasts were from the Central Coast and Raymond Terrace. Detectives today were still trying to determine what instigated the mass violence.
2 blokes have got into an argument. That has escalated into a fight between the two, and then that escalated into a brawl.
By the time the fight was over, the car park was splattered with blood and torn clothing. The area was locked down as officers searched for witnesses and evidence.
Nobby's car park was shut off because that's where the fight was, and the area was examined by our forensic police.
Police say violence between visiting car hoons has been an ongoing problem in the area.
It's been happening for years, and from time to time emotions get a bit high and occasionally there's a fight.
No charges have been laid. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's not much now, but in 2 years, this 135-hectare site on Kooragang Island will house a $1 billion coal terminal capable of processing up to 66 million tonnes of product each year. The Newcastle Coal Infrastructure Group was awarded the tender for the project 3 years ago, ending Port Waratah Coal Services' monopoly on coal loading. NCIG will initially process 30 million tonnes of coal each year, 1/3 of the amount processed by its competition, but the third loader will have a greater stockpile capacity.
So that means you can bring trains in at regular intervals rather than having to bring them all in together to load a ship.
The first stage of development, which involves compacting the ground, was marked with a ceremony today. The third loader is expected to boost exports by $1 billion each year and provide 5,000 jobs across the state, 1,000 of them in the construction phase.
Filters back into our housing, filters back into our education establishments, such as the university and the TAFE colleges. So it's a great boost for the economy.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
The industries on Kooragang Island have an insatiable thirst for water, and to help meet the demand in a sustainable way, Hunter Water is planning to build a state-of-the-art filtration plant on the Steel River site that will turn sewage from Stockton and Shortland into better-than-drinking quality water to be used by industry.
You often think of industry as requiring poorer quality water, but industry requires higher quality water in some circumstances for boiler feed and their industrial processes. So industry at the moment treats our drinking water to a higher standard in some cases, and we can get effluent to such a high standard that it meets their needs.
But he says despite the quality, getting people to drink treated effluent will require a major shift in public perceptions. Meantime, Hunter Water and the state government today handed over 4 surplus blocks of land to the people of Newcastle. Part of the disused Stockton treatment plant site will allow the playing fields at Corobba Oval to be extended to house 2 soccer fields, a cricket pitch and an athletics track. And the obelisk site on the hill in Newcastle, which once housed a water reservoir, was also handed over. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It seems Newcastle really missed its show.
I'm looking around and we're looking at generations. I think a lot of people I've spoken to are saying, you know, I haven't been to the show for so long and it's great.
After being cancelled last year for the first time in more than a century, the event has returned with a bang. The Showgirl competition opened proceedings last night. Kathleen Carson, the lucky winner, an early birthday present for the student who turned 18 today. The camel race was a crowd pleaser, with our newsreader Ray Deneen looking far from comfortable. To the pleasure of organisers, an estimated 10,000 people took advantage of the public holiday for the first full day of the show.
Look at the crowds, they're enormous. We've got them coming everywhere. Every gate is packed. Every ticket box is going crazy.
The increase in variety of rides seemed to go down well, as did new additions such as Scallywags Hall and Country Corner. The farm animals were irresistibly cute and colourful, but the short-tempered piglets were only putting up with so much. Wallets were lightened at Showbag Alley, where 30,000 bags are expected to be sold over the weekend. And of course, a visit to the show is never complete without a Dagwood dog. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Sitting 2 from 2, it's the competitive nature of Newcastle in the opening 4 rounds this season which has surprised even some at the club. But they all know Sunday's match will be a real guide to just where the Knights sit.
It's a great opportunity for us to really get some credibility back into our place. I think we've been steadily building at that, but I don't think anyone could deny if we can manage to beat Brisbane that we're a reasonable team in 08.
Having Ben Cross in the lineup for the first time this season is certainly going to be a big help, but the fact Brisbane will be without its captain and 5/8 Darren Lockyer won't hurt either, with David Stagg to play in the number 6.
I know what my role is, and I'm no Darren Lockyer, so I just stick to what I can do.
It's a similar story south of the border, with Newcastle's Chris Bailey stepping in for the injured Jared Mullen, while halfback Scott Giroux has won his battle to overcome a rib problem.
He did a fitness test. I think it was harder than any game he's played yet, so he was a punching bag for a couple of front rowers this morning.
And he can expect plenty of traffic on Sunday too. Besides his footballing background and business acumen, it appears Robert Chew's independence was ultimately the key ingredient which saw him elected to chair the Knights board for the next 2 years. With the previous board deeply divided, the new chairman and his deputy, both fresh faces on the new board, gave a clear indication of what's expected.
I encourage rigorous debate on all issues, but once the decision's taken and the majority's spoken at board level, I expect that and I've been given a commitment today that our fellow directors will be behind any majority decision that's taken, 100%.
If there is any residual issue then with various members, then they need to be put out on the table like men and like gentlemen and have them resolved so we can do what we're engaged to do.
They would have liked what they heard from previous chairman Peter Corcoran, who Chew defeated for the position today.
I've got no interest in doing anything else but what's good for the club and the members.
The financial situation of the club is sure to be high on the order of business, and in the short term, a new arrangement with the Wests Group remains a key focal point. Thoughts on securing financial safety for the long term remains open.
I'm not aware of any discussions on privatisation at this point, but I'd say this, the decisions that this board will take will be in the best interests of its membership.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. Neither are ice hockey superpowers, but there's a traditional rivalry in anything that involves these two. It certainly had all the hallmarks of a rugby clash as both got stuck into each other. And the Kiwis showed they could mix it in the playing stakes too, keeping pace with their more fancied opponents. Greg Oddie, though, continues his impressive tournament, setting up Chris Sakura. New Zealand always remained a threat, with the hosts forced to fight hard in securing a 4-2 win and maintain their hold on top spot in the competition with 2 rounds remaining. In Newcastle Rugby League, Cessnock heads to Raymond Terrace tomorrow night, boasting several former Magpies stars. All other games are on Sunday. Traditional rivals Merewether and Wanderers do battle in Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Union tomorrow, while University face a tough test against Hamilton. And the NBN Football League season kicks off this weekend, with tomorrow night's match at Hamilton sure to hold plenty of interest, with Olympic sporting several ex-Edgeworth players. Brown tap water has been part of life for as long as Denman's 1,800 residents can remember.
It can be brown, it can ruin clothing during the washing process, and for years Denman people have been putting up with conditions like that, which are unacceptable in 2008.
But things are starting to look clearer, with taps to the new water treatment plant turned on this week.
We're not wasting the water that's in the current reservoir, so there'll be a shandy, if you like to call it that, for the next couple of weeks while the new water takes over.
Replacing the old bore system, the state-of-the-art treatment plant has been funded by Muswellbrook Council and the state government, and no one's more excited about it than Denman's residents.
It's long overdue. The people of Denman have put up with some terrible water conditions over the years.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News. For many Newcastle residents, the weekend just wouldn't be the same without some time spent on the old rail corridor known as the Fernley Track.
I think more and more people are talking about the Fernley Track, and I think it's a great asset to Newcastle as a whole.
The track's as popular with cyclists as it is with walkers, but it comes to an abrupt end at Whitebridge. The money from the federal government will enable the popular pathway to be extended to Redhead.
We have to wait for it to the final sign-off to be in our hand, but I think we're very excited about it, that this is a marvellous opportunity to extend the cycleway.
With work expected to start within a couple of months, the Fernley Track Committee is now talking about securing funding for the next stage, which will take the path to Belmont.
Merewether at home is always hard to beat, but gifting them points early doesn't make things any easier. The two Blues guilty of playing the man and not the ball on too many occasions, and the ill discipline cost them both position and points. Up 6-0, it was a slick Greens backline that conjured up their first try as the Premiers played every bit like a team on the march towards a title defence. More points coming before half-time, with Callum Parkinson parting Wanderers' defence to land in green corner. Leading 18-0, the Greens stepped up the attack in the second half as the scoring floodgates opened. Merewether romping home to a 58-0 win. The big victory made especially sweet considering the nature of this derby.
This is a team building weekend, so a bit about trust and a bit about believing in each other.
They're causing erosion, and in the fire season, fires mysteriously start here. If it's under control, it'll provide an excellent location for picnics for people using the Fernley track.
Organisers of this year's show are breathing a sigh of relief tonight as they hail the event the most successful in a decade. Their efforts to rekindle the show after its popularity took a dive in recent years seem to have paid off, with 60,000 people walking through the gates. Today's crowd of 16,000 was the busiest Sunday in the show's history. Organisers say people were attracted by a new-look sideshow alley, additional exhibits and shows such as the hilarious and very cute Duck Fashion Parade. And of course, the beautiful autumn weather didn't hurt either. Organisers are now looking ahead to 2009. There's talk of a food and wine expo and an increase in agricultural-based activities and exhibits.
A number of people have said to me, what about food and wine? So we'll be looking at that and see whether that's feasible.
Improvements to the showground, which were half finished for this year's show, should be completed in time for next year.
Both grandstands have still to be renovated underneath and opened up. There's still some painting to be done around the place and roadworks.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Greg Oddie has been a standout performer at Warners Bay all week, and after he almost set up the home team's first, he did it all himself from long range. The physical nature of these fixtures have been a highlight all week, and neither backed down last night. It's goals that count, and Matthew's Matt Ezzi wasn't letting Iceland have any, as Australia's man in front of goal was determined to shut them out. Knocking them out seemed more on Iceland's mind. It was Oddie who kept delivering the blows that counted as he doubled Australia's lead. The more the game went on, the more the tension rose. But right on the stroke of full-time came the killer strike from Aaron Clayworth. Iceland goalie Dennis Hedstrom filthy. Australia just one game away from gold and elevation to First Division.
Apparently, the key to success in this 200-year-old sport is the contestants' choice of style.
Estonian style, it seems to be the best way and easy to carry.
For her just to hang on as tight as possible and hope to finish the race. That was it.
No matter the style, the water obstacle brought most couples undone, with one exception. Singleton's Adam and Jessica showed how it's done, taking the early lead. Emma and Keith came close, but were let down by their pre-game prep. Two-time champion Anthony Partridge made a cameo appearance, carrying former Australian swimmer Gian Rooney.
I was trying to encourage, but I just kept laughing the whole way.
If Gian and Anthony had the shortest odds, the longest odds belonged to this pair. Dave's legs almost failed him, but driven by the fear of Julia falling off, dragged all 120 kilograms of the Irish international over the line.
You can taste blood in your lungs yet, that's what it was like.
Absolute man mountain, Australia's finest, David Vaughan.
Learning from the mistakes of those before them, Lenice and Jason clocked 1 minute and 4 seconds to claim the title, but the couple knows they'll have to revisit their game plan before the world titles.
I was probably waving to the crowd too much, so yeah, that cost a couple of seconds.
Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
It was supposed to be a friendly Friday night get-together in the bush off Glendon Close in Glendale, but the gathering of teenagers got completely out of hand. Newcastle Supreme Court today watched a 1 hour and 6 minute video of a police interview with James Williamson, recorded just a few hours after he was arrested for allegedly stabbing a 15-year-old at the party. "I thought they were my friends," he told the officers. "They invited me to go have a party with them. I felt that something was going down, that they were leading me into the bush." Williamson went on to tell police he was showing some friends a glass crack pipe he'd found in a nearby quarry that day when he was confronted by the teenage victim. He took his shirt off and said he didn't have any beef with us, but he wanted to fight someone. "I was lying on the ground and he started beating me, and that's when his mates all started laying into me." The Crown alleges the defendant was wrestling with the victim on the ground when he stabbed him in the stomach and then ran off into the bush. But Williamson maintains he wasn't fighting anyone, just defending himself. During the interview, police asked Williamson if he'd stabbed the victim with the glass crack pipe. He replied, "I think that's probably what it would have been. Apparently I stabbed him. I can't remember stabbing him." Justice Bruce James will hear sentencing submissions on the 2nd of June. Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
Soon after the tip was closed, Council levelled the 20-hectare site with the idea of eventually developing it into a recreation area, possibly including sporting grounds and a lookout.
Council saw the potential of making it into a quality recreation area with the fabulous expansive views of the lake and the ocean, and as such put in place a landform.
But that was 14 years ago, and today the site is still unused, except by motorcyclists who it's believed are causing erosion. Local residents, including Dudley's Don Owers, say the area is being treated as a dumping ground and want Council to push ahead with the site's redevelopment as soon as possible. But Council says there are competing priorities.
We're doing a lot of other planning in a lot of other urban release areas throughout the city where population is expanding pretty rapidly, and so we would be envisaging master planning in the 5 to 10 year time span.
When the master plan for the site is eventually developed, Council says it will be in close consideration with the Fernley track, which will be extended from Whitebridge to Redhead within a year. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News. Jamie and Anthony are taking this twin thing quite literally. They graduated side by side with a Bachelor of Music in 2005 and today they made their education degree official.
I started off doing it and Jamie couldn't help but do what his big brother does, so he was always there.
He needs a mentor with a lot of the stuff that we do, so it's good to be able to be there and help him out.
The occasion has special significance for Jamie, who lost everything, including his textbooks and computer, when his Bar Beach unit was destroyed by fire at Easter.
It'll take us a little while to build it up again, but it's just a shame we lost all the work that we've done.
Also graduating with a Bachelor of Education, Indigenous students David Hartwig and Megan Griffiths. They are two of 59 Indigenous graduates. 20 years ago, there was just two.
It offers us an avenue to empower ourselves and our Aboriginality, as well as to help our communities, which is very important.
The graduates were among 1,000 to receive a Bachelor of Education during 3 ceremonies today, the first of 11 to be held throughout the week.
They've put in great effort and it's a time, I know it's only a few seconds on the stage, but it's a time when they're recognised.
Lauren Bloodwell, NBN News.
The cold and wet weather may make us miserable, but the conditions are just right for the flu virus to thrive.
It comes a time when the flu virus can spread very rapidly. It survives more easily in the environment, in fact, when it's wet.
Last year's flu season was severe, so this year health authorities are urging people to get vaccinated early by the end of this month.
Well, it takes a couple of weeks for the flu vaccine to work, so if we actually wait until the flu virus has hit the area and we have a lot of people ill, it may be too late to rush off and get a vaccine.
Anyone who wants to protect their health this winter should get the jab, but it's especially important for the elderly. It's free for those over 65. And vaccination is also recommended for people with chronic medical conditions like asthma. The influenza virus is highly contagious, and depending on the severity of the strain, up to 10% of us will catch it this season. Symptoms can be severe, not like your common cold.
So normally you get an acute onset of fever, muscle aches, headache and cough.
The flu vaccine is now available and just may help save you from a painful winter.
He's not about to represent Australia in beach volleyball, but with a league ball in hand, Kurt Gidley continues to prove he can play just about anywhere. It's a handy thing too for his club because a move to halfback is on the cards.
I won't be the typical halfback sort of thing, but running with the ball and passing early is probably going to be go.
It didn't seem to work too bad yesterday. With Scott Duro injuring ankle ligaments, Gidley was pushed into first receiver and almost guided the Knights home against Brisbane. With Jared Mullen also at odds to be back, he's shaping as the man most likely to play halfback against the Roosters this weekend, a position some have already suggested he could fill at Origin level.
I'd like to think Kurt could have a couple of games there. He hasn't played halfback for a long time. He's matured as a footballer and to play Origin and halfback, we'll see what happens, but I know he'd be up to it.
That's the next step to try and get in the starting team, and I guess you'd be prepared to play anywhere, I suppose, if to jump in the team.
While there's a fear Adam McDougall's knee injury may be worse than originally thought, it's hoped he can return this week should Wes Nguama be required to cover at fullback. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
With fans watching on in comfort from the new $1 million grandstand at Harry Elliott Oval, the Foster Tuncurry Hawks opened their 2008 season premiership campaign. Wingham ran the ball early, but the Hawks weren't deterred, taking the upper hand from the outset. Des Donnelly sent winger Tyrone Kelly over the line for the Hawks' first 4-pointer. 5'8" PJ Taylor followed soon after, roping in a pass from Matt Finlayson to push the Hawks further ahead. Club stalwart Troy Hilder led by example, running half the field to set up an easy conversion. The Hawks' rampage continued unabated, a chip kick from PJ Taylor setting up Donnelly for another try. Winger Christian Rowan ran around and then through the flimsy Tigers' defence towards an unbeatable scoreline. A second-half comeback by the Tigers wasn't enough to peg back the massive deficit, the Hawks eventually taking the match 52-14. Lynn Laleen, NBN News.
The winning feeling was still sinking in today, but if they needed any reminding, the gold medal only confirmed that Australia is now the Division 2 World Ice Hockey Champions.
It's a great feeling. It's tough to describe, but I feel like we're on top of the world right now.
Taking on China in the fifth and final match overnight, it was their toughest assignment. The scoreline reflecting the nature of this battle, and even the goal was a hard-fought thing, as Australia finally found the net for what proved to be the winner. Players hoping the win finally puts Australia on the map both domestically and overseas.
I don't think the ice hockey community has any choice but to take a second look at Australia and see what we can do.
Now in the World Division 1, it means players will soon be in one of the game's biggest shop fronts.
There's quite a few NHL players that play in the teams that we're going to be playing against, so it's going to be one hell of an experience.
It's going to be interesting to go against guys that are making over $1 million a year playing hockey, and most of us are just, making our money working our 9-to-5 jobs.
While the Mighty Roos may have fought for respect and recognition, there's no hiding the realities of where they sit. All three return to work tomorrow.
It's no secret binge drinking and alcohol-fuelled violence are rife in Newcastle.
Well, Newcastle's got the unfortunate distinction of having the highest alcohol violence rate in the state.
It's shocking and it's considered normal.
Ironically, it's the city's much publicised and ongoing problem with alcohol that will ultimately benefit the rest of Australia. Today, several prominent residents joined the newly formed National Alliance Against Alcohol-Related Violence to offer advice about how other cities can bring the problem under control.
Newcastle's taken the lead nationally at the moment with our approach to alcohol, and we need to move forward and help in any way we can to better Australia.
In particular, they'll be touting the advantage of the Liquor Administration Board's newly imposed 1am curfew on the CBD's licensed venues.
We're being watched by Australia and New Zealand, and I think that the work that we've done will show how it can be done.
And there's no shortage of stories about the impacts of alcohol abuse.
My brother was a victim of an unprovoked attack, and he lay unconscious for 10 minutes. And he had his front teeth knocked out, and if he'd fallen at a slightly different angle, who knows what could have happened.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. "2007's crime statistics are out, and Northern Region Commander Lee Shearer's happy with her troops' performance.
The police are, in my view, working very hard. They're achieving great outcomes for the community.
Most notably, today's figures show a marked decrease in theft. In Newcastle, stealing from homes dropped from 886 cases to 755, while stealing from cars was down by 91. Lake Macquarie saw an even bigger decrease.
We've seen quite a significant drop in regards to steal from motor vehicle, which is pleasing because traditionally we have had high numbers in that area.
Ms Shearer even managed to put a positive spin on a sharp spike in non-domestic assaults, offensive conduct and liquor offences in Newcastle.
When you see an upturn in offences like disorderly conduct, that shows police are on the street and intervening in the areas that are needed.
Worryingly, though, is an across-the-board increase in the number of murders committed throughout the region. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Claims big businesses use political donations to buy access to ministers isn't new to local government.
I've been in local government for well over 40 years, and I think there has always been the suggestion that these things do occur.
The New South Wales Property Council wants to see the whole development process depoliticised, but Hunter Council say developers paying up for a sympathetic ear only adds to their calls for approval powers to be handed back to the local community.
And it creates further concern by the centralisation of power in the development issues in Sydney, instead of retaining them or leaving them in the local area, in the local councils where they should belong.
Maitland Mayor Peter Blackmore agrees, especially with the controversy over the government's approval of the Huntley Newtown residential development near Branxton still simmering, a development even the planning department wasn't in favour of.
We have to abide by what the government is saying, and yet it can appear as though there are two sets of rules.
Newcastle MP Jodie McKay is certainly aware of the controversy over developer contributions. Bill Dev gave $50,000 of in-kind support to her election campaign, which the Greens claim she didn't declare, something she blames on an administrative error by head office.
I never ever thought I would be in this situation where I get caught up in something like this. It's just an appalling thing for anyone to have to deal with.
Jodie's situation has spurred the ALP to audit donations received by their candidates at last year's election, but the Greens say all candidates need to be scrutinised. Penny Evans, NBN News. Reducing the amount of waste going to landfill from your household by 40% is as simple as getting a few chooks or starting your own compost bin or worm farm. And of course, you get the byproducts. Another great idea is to grow organic herbs and vegetables in the backyard. However, modern life means many of us don't have the space for show-winning produce, so why not join a community garden like this one at Katara?
We've got around 52 volunteers that come in and they can plant all their own vegetables here. We actually have it 100% organic, so there's no chemicals or pesticides.
If not, try to buy local goods to cut down on freight and fuel.
When you go to the produce, see if you can buy produce that's been produced in the area.
If you lack the know-how on what chickens most like to eat or where is the best spot to put a rainwater tank, Newcastle Council is running a series of workshops over the coming months to help make the average home more environmentally sustainable.
It does involve a bit of research. That's where the workshops are good. You can take time out for 2 hours and come and it's like a one-stop shop.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
If you needed any indication how far league has grown in its 100 years, the two Knights players showing off the heritage playing strip are a perfect example. James McManus was born in Scotland and grew up in Darwin, while Corey Patterson spent much of his formative years in Perth. For Riley Brown, he left Newcastle for Sydney this year, and Sunday's match will be his first against his former club.
Sort of looking forward to it, playing against some old mates, although I think they got half the team I don't even know because they had a big clean out.
He'd remember Kurt Gidley, who's switching to halfback. Wes Nguama will cover him at fullback, while Adam McDougall is expected to make his return after 4 weeks out with a knee injury. The changes come on the back of a double injury blow on the halves in recent weeks, with an ankle ligament injury to Scott Duro ruling him out and Jared Mullen unlikely to be rushed back from his calf muscle tear. But it doesn't matter who runs out there on Sunday. Newcastle has to address one major area of concern: errors.
Keep shooting ourselves in the foot. We're our own worst nightmare, but hopefully we can eliminate some errors and hold on the footy.
Jim Callanan, NBN News. "50 centimetres, half a metre. It doesn't sound like much, but it's all that separates Ben Harradine from going to the Beijing Olympics. And that's why the 25-year-old Melbourne-based Elibana boy is training almost on a daily basis.
It's similar to a golf swing in the fact that it becomes timing, and it's increasing little subtle changes in your technique just to get that extra distance, because the harder you try and throw, the less it goes.
Winning back-to-back national titles last month, Harradine is no stranger to big competition, with a Commonwealth Games finals appearance to his credit. But it's that elusive 65.5 metre mark he needs in competition to secure a spot on athletics' biggest stage. It would also break an Australian record, ironically set by another Novocastrian, Wayne Martin, back in 1979, and Harradine hopes he'll find both on a coming trip to the US.
14 years ago, you never think that you sort of get there, but now it's sort of presented in front of me and it's all about taking it. And I'm just ready, you know. I've said yes, it's time, I want to do it now.
Harradine has until June 23 to throw the required distance, and by the looks, he'll take some stopping. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
I received an email from his manager probably 2 weeks ago just suggesting that the matter was gone.
And that's it?
That's it. Yeah, there's no more smokes and mirrors than that in it.
From all accounts, it seems the woman who lost her life was an innocent victim of this morning's crash. Police say she was driving her black Hyundai east along Palmer's Road at Freeman's Waterhole with her small son around 10 o'clock when two other vehicles clipped each other, one in front of her, a red Toyota sedan, and one oncoming, a red Jeep four-wheel drive. It's believed the Jeep then crashed into the black Hyundai, hitting the driver's side of the car with full force. The woman died behind the wheel. Her son miraculously escaped without so much as a scratch. The little boy was airlifted to the John Hunter Hospital, while two people from the red Jeep were transported by road ambulance with minor injuries.
At this stage, we've got an unattended child who's been taken to the John Hunter Hospital, and inquiries are underway to locate some next of kin.
Police say it's too early to tell if charges will be laid over the crash. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
High-profile cases like the double murder of 37-year-old Joanne Tetron and 32-year-old Susan Kay inside their Carrington home in 2000 will be re-examined.
From tomorrow, we're forming an unsolved homicide investigations team. Expressions of interest are going out today for staff to staff that section.
The specialist team is to be based at Newcastle Police Station, but will investigate unsolved murders from throughout the state's northern region. Officers will work with local detectives and review old evidence to see if it can be retested using more modern methods.
Giving us the opportunity to have a dedicated team that can utilise new technology such as DNA, etc., and review each of the matters and see if we can solve them.
Police are keeping tight-lipped about how many officers will be in the unit and which particular cases they'll be investigating. With a designated team, they're hoping to put a dent in the many unsolved murder cases.
We can really focus on these matters and, as I said, hopefully identify the offenders and they can be brought to justice.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. After a drawn-out process, the council has finally picked its preferred tender, a consortium made up of mostly local people who want to develop a restaurant, kiosk and some form of public facilities on the site. And while the majority of the details remain under wraps for commercial reasons, one thing seems sure. Whether council does it or a developer does, the wrecking ball is coming for the derelict icon.
I'd anticipate the building will be demolished through either course of action. There's no indication that the building would be kept.
What the council is firm on is that negotiations don't drag on. It said some form of commercial agreement must be reached within the next 3 months or the whole deal is off. If it gets to that point, the council will bring down Surf House themselves.
Council's also conscious of the fact that this has gone on for a long period of time and we want to bring it to an end one way or the other.
The Lord Mayor promises the years of debate are coming to an end.
We don't want the eyesore sitting there any longer.
Penny Evans, NBN News.
The state government has pocketed $6.4 million from the sale of the Charlestown TAFE campus, $1.5 million from Adamstown Public School and almost $2 million from selling Wallsend Infants School. All up, 7 education sites have been sold in the Hunter in the last 5 years, netting the state government $13 million.
What we want to know is that money being spent in Sydney or is it being spent in the Hunter? Tell us where it's going.
Ms Parker says every cent of it should go directly back into Hunter schools to address urgent maintenance problems.
The growing list of maintenance is just beyond belief, and if this government can't manage bread and butter issues such as fixing up leaking roofs.
Education Minister John Delabosca says all the money has been reinvested in maintenance and capital works at the state schools, and more than $50 million has been spent on maintenance in the Hunter in the last 5 years. Lauren Bladwell, NBN News.
Hillsborough, in conjunction with the Cardiff Industrial Estate, is the biggest employment zone within the region, and certainly we're very pleased that we're seeing this land put to that sort of purpose.
After a promising start to the season, the Knights have now lost 3 in a row. Not an ideal time to meet the all-conquering Roosters.
They're probably one of the form teams of the comp, especially with their forward pack. They've got a great go forward at the moment, so it's definitely going to be a big test for us.
Kurt Gidley and Chris Bailey will make their starting debut as halfback and 5/8, but as housemates, they believe they already have an understanding.
We get along well at home, so hopefully it comes on the field as well.
As if starting at halfback for the first time this season isn't tough enough, Gidley is also being assessed as a possible number 7 for the Blues. At this stage, he seems more excited than nervous.
I'm happy with the way I'm playing at fullback, and I enjoy playing fullback, but halfback it is this week, so I'm looking forward to that challenge too.
Following a strong finish to the second half against the Broncos, Gidley and Bailey are hoping their combination can provide a strong start that's been lacking in recent weeks.
I did train there a little bit last week, and then Scotty going off injured towards the end of the game. We got a bit of a taste of it last week, so hopefully it's nothing too surprising for both of us.
But is there anything they'll be doing at home to prepare?
Yeah, I think so. We might even get out in the backyard and do a bit. We'll get the dog to run a bit of defence for us and do a bit like that.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. He got a taste of the big time in 2006, finishing 4th at the Commonwealth Games. Since then, injury has robbed Carrington's Scott Westcott of his best form.
You know, all the training that had been accumulating over years and years and years, it kind of stopped there for a while and I had to pick it up again. So it was almost like starting all over again.
For a man who's dedicated his career to pounding the pavement, this admission would shock most athletes.
It doesn't matter to me whether I go or if I don't go to the Olympics. I've let go of that dream a long time ago.
Far from a defeatist attitude, Westcott believes this casual approach will actually prove beneficial. The 32-year-old travels to Italy for a high-profile event next week, needing to shave a mere 90 seconds off his best time of 2 hours and 12 minutes to guarantee a place on the Australian team.
If I can just be in a race where I get a sniff of victory, I'm competitive, and I forget about time, I think that's going to lead to a better end result.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It was a terrifying case of deja vu for Maitland businessman Bob Dick this morning. Just after 10 o'clock, he received a frantic phone call from his wife June saying their home was again being burgled.
I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
The offender, who is only described as a blonde woman with a slim build, rammed the property's security gate with a white car, then used a garden statue to smash through a window. She fled the scene, however, once she realised someone was home. The couple wasn't so lucky earlier this year when a man forced his way inside the house and assaulted June before escaping with thousands of dollars in cash.
Tied the wife up and dragged her all around the house, looking for money.
And they got quite a bit, didn't they?
He found the safe and all the jewellery.
The elderly couple plan to install security cameras as well as stainless steel mesh over every window to deter further attacks.
Yeah, it's terrible that you've got to make your home a fortress.
Police say while there's no clear link between the break-ins, they can't yet rule out a connection. They're now forensically testing evidence gathered at both scenes. Madeline Bond, NBN News. At $1.52.9 per litre, the price of petrol is one of the Hunter's hottest topics.
I think it's filthy. It's terrible. There's no two ways about it. It shouldn't be that price.
I think it's a bit of a joke that we've got to pay this much for fuel.
Motorists blaming oil companies and the federal government for the spiralling cost, which many believe is unjustified. 10 years ago, the average fuel price in Newcastle was 77.9 cents and 77.2 in Maitland. In April last year, it came in at around $1.29 in both Newcastle and Maitland. And in the last month, the region's average petrol price has jumped 10 cents.
The petrol companies can charge whatever they want because none of us really know what the cost of fuel is costing them.
I think the government could probably reduce the cost a little bit, reduce the tax on them.
But today's unleaded price was cheap compared to diesel, which cost around $1.67.9.
Diesel should be half the price it is. It's the first thing made out of the thing and it costs half as much as refined. The oil companies are making a fortune out of it.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Revellers' behaviour in Newcastle CBD last Saturday night failed to impress the New South Wales Director of Liquor and Gaming.
A high number of people, causing trouble, littering, being abusive, offensive, typical of antisocial behaviour.
He says unless the behaviour of patrons improves during the trial 1am curfew and 3am closure imposed on the city's licensed venues, drastic action could be taken.
If that doesn't work and after a range of strategies have tried and tested and have failed, then there's 2am option and then there's a 1am option and so forth.
And from July 1, when new liquor laws come into force, he'll have the power to do it. The changes will see the Casino, Liquor and Gaming Control Authority take over from the Licensing Court and Liquor Administration Board. Fines doubled for licensees and bar staff who serve underage or intoxicated people, and residents given more power on liquor licence approvals.
The big difference is that the new liquor laws are all about community impact. And the new authority is an administrative-based body, not a court-based system.
It's an emotion-charged environment.
The visiting family law judges up here tell us that the cases they see in Newcastle are amongst the most difficult in the country.
In 1999, a woman was stabbed by her de facto husband outside the Newcastle Family Court. That led to security screening inside the building and some frightening fines.
Knives to screwdrivers, syringes, that's a constant that they're dealing with.
A recent review has highlighted serious safety risks as well as major overcrowding issues. People can wait up to 2 years to have their cases completed, double the national average.
It's a crisis and we need to find a quick solution.
There's been talk about combining Commonwealth and state facilities, but Sharon Grierson says the family court issue is urgent.
I'm saying to the Attorney-General, it's required now. Let's fast-track this.
The Law Society wants any new building to be in the CBD legal precinct.
One of the sites that springs to mind is Stage 2 of the Royal Newcastle Hospital site.
Attorney-General Robert McClellan says his office is looking at the issue. He's been called upon to visit the court himself.
Today we have helicopters to rescue shipwrecked sailors, but a century ago the lifeboat was the only way to save lives. This photo shows the crew of the lifeboat Victoria after rescuing 32 sailors from the French barque Adolphe, which came to grief on Newcastle's Oyster Bank in 1904. Many of those in the lifeboat service perished while trying to save others, and today some of their descendants gathered at the new Maritime Centre to kickstart a renewed hunt for information.
We're hoping to find more memorabilia associated with the Victoria lifeboat and find more descendants.
We are at last recognising the history of these wonderful men on the lifeboat.
A new book and a public monument are planned to remember the efforts of those like Tom Wynn's great-great-grandfather, lifeboat coxswain William Ahern.
So far they're part of the forgotten history of Newcastle. There have been lots of small books written about the actual rescue missions, but no one's really stopped to detail the lives of the 100 or so men that went out every year to go out and try to perform some of these rescues.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
At 4:30 in the morning, Monday to Friday, this is how Shelley Clark starts the day. Chasing a black line for 10 kilometres, or in a 25-metre pool, that's 400 laps, up and back until 8 a.m, and that's just for starters.
And I take my hat off to it because I wouldn't be able to do it. 10K sessions, 10 times a week. You're doing 3.5 hours by yourself, there's nothing worse. Must have a vivid imagination, that's all I can think of.
Shelley's been imagining herself with a world title for 7 years, but it's been weighing on her mind, especially so since the disappointment of Melbourne last year. At 27, though, she has everything to look forward to.
The world champion's 30 years old, which I'm still a few years off yet. So, yeah, I really hope to improve on my 7th position of last year.
Shelley is the best female this country has to offer over 25Ks in the 10-man long-distance Aussie team, with the fresh waters of Spain better suited to her style.
A lot of people feel more buoyant and float better in salt water, but for me, I feel better if I'm not as buoyant and sitting lower in the water, I swim faster.
This is Shelley's 7th World Championship campaign, and should she be 7th time lucky, what a sign that would make. Adam McIlrick, NBN News. At 4:30 in the morning, Monday to Friday, this is how Shelley Clark starts the day. Chasing a black line for 10 kilometres, or in a 25-metre pool, that's 400 laps. Up and back until 8 a.m, and that's just for starters.
And I take my hat off to it because I wouldn't be able to do it. 10k sessions, 10 times a week. You're doing 3.5 hours by yourself. There's nothing worse. Must have a vivid imagination. That's all I can think of.
Shelley's been imagining herself with a world title for 7 years, but it's been weighing on her mind, especially so since the disappointment of Melbourne last year. At 27, though, she has everything to look forward to.
The world champion's 30 years old, which I'm still a few years off yet. So, yeah, I really hope to improve on my 7th position of last year.
Shelley is the best female this country has to offer over 25Ks in the 10-man long-distance Aussie team, with the fresh waters of Spain better suited to her style.
A lot of people feel more buoyant and float better in salt water, but for me, I feel better if I'm not as buoyant and sitting lower in the water, I swim faster.
This is Shelley's 7th World Championship campaign, and should she be 7th time lucky, what a sign that would make. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Well, that's what happens in these sort of tricky conditions. I mean, there really is a fair bit of luck in any sort of competition surfing.
Knowing that there was this catastrophic event that's happening around you and there's nothing that can be done about it.